A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine, which is about Nikola Tesla today. I have a little experiment here that I want to show you. You see how you can transfer energy with a stick without actually having direct contact. Do you see that? And this Tesla technology is available today. And as we'll hear from our expert in a moment, it can also be used in an incredibly revolutionary way in medicine, based on many observations. I'd like to introduce my guest to you. This is once more the health analyst and expert. Welcome, dear Peer Zebergs. Thank you for joining me. Thank you once again for having me. So you can quickly solve this riddle. How is it possible that I can get this lamp to burn without actually having direct contact? Yeah, that goes back to the invention of, in fact, Nikola Tesla, who lived from 1870 to 1943. Well, the circumstances of his death are a bit unclear. Maybe he's also disappeared. That's not very clear. In any case, in the opinion of a great many people, he was the greatest inventor of all time. And there's the anecdote that Albert Einstein once was asked by a journalist, "How does it actually feel to be the most intelligent person in the world?" Then he is supposed to have said, "You don't have to ask me, you have to ask Nikola Tesla." He was a humble person, yeah. And now we get to Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla discovered that there is not just one electromagnetic wave. The Hertzian wave, that was the Hertzian wave, where you have a carrier wave, 95.8 VHF. I have a carrier wave, and on this carrier wave, this electromagnetic wave, can I set up an information frequency? That's what we then hear as the radio. We don't hear the frequency itself to go into resonance. We basically only hear what information is put on. That was the state of affairs until Tesla. And he said, there's more. That more is an electromagnetic wave that does not spread like a radio signal at once, basically like a ball, but is laser-like. And I can also use lasers for energy. So this second electromagnetic wave, is that a longitude wave? This is what is known as a longitudinal wave. And one in honor of Tesla, it is also called the Tesla wave. Some also say scalar wave, but I'm not quite sure. It's 100% identical, but some also say scalar wave. In any case, it has the property that I have a carrier wave. I have information frequencies, which I can store on it, plus I can store energy frequencies on it. This is basically the possibility of wireless energy transfer. And that's a discovery that has it all. And back then he actually lost or scared off his sponsor, because he wanted to prove, and did prove, that you could conduct electricity without cables, even on a large scale. May I just briefly, nowadays you can also buy modern cell phones that are no longer plugged in, but also the battery is charged if it's only in the vicinity of a transformer. Is that then also a longitudinal wave? I suspect that, but I don't know that in detail now, but I suspect that it is. But in any case, he lost the sponsor back then, which was JP Morgan, from JP Morgan Bank, and he was the operator of radio stations. He really only wanted to spread his radio waves better. That basically, the hearing quality is better, the signal quality is better. Tesla did that. Tesla was a bit of a loner who basically pushed his invention forward. How to conduct electricity wirelessly. Then he built a giant tower, a transmitting station on the other side, a few meters further, a receiving station. And then he let lightning bolts arise here, so to speak, sent them into the sky, and over there he pulled the energy down again. That cost him the sponsor JP Morgan. Back then he was already doing it on a large scale. I used to listen to the radio with FM, medium wave, long wave. Was it the long wave where music was sent very long via this Tesla wave? These are completely normal electromagnetic Hertzian waves, so it wasn't that. And at that time he already recognized that these frequencies are extremely important for health. He had a studio. He always sat in front of a huge electromagnetic coil. I know the picture. And then he said it inspires him incredibly, and he said that he didn't discover a lot of things. They were given to him, so to speak. He believed that it strengthened intuition. And there's another anecdote. Mark Twain was friends with Tesla and loved his stays with him, because with him, when he was near this coil, he had the best inspirations for his stories. And what many don't know, there's soon a book that will be published which is called Nikola Tesla, the Unknown Healer. He was very strong in the health sector, and he was in Stockholm for some reason one time. And there was a school with mentally handicapped children. And there they had about 50 students, and they had 2 different classrooms. Then, without anyone knowing where it was installed, he put his Tesla coils in one classroom. And after a while, only one student group was in there. The others were in normal rooms. Then they found out that's what the director said. If we continued the experiment for another year, the mentally retarded children would basically overtake normal children in intelligence. And then there was the demand from Tesla, who was always radical in his demands. Or what he then said to society, these coils must be incorporated into all classrooms to maximize the intellectual potential of children. Did he also charge these coils with energy? It was electromagnetic coils that was then carried on and partly used by various other scientists. A very great scientist in the field was Ewald Paul, who was a doctor in radio frequency technology. And he's written whole books about energy fields, what can be achieved with it. But then the coils looked different. There were coils that you sat in between. And George Lakhovsky developed that further. He was a Russian engineer. And he developed these coils people sat in between. And he had such healing success, you can't imagine it. There's a book from 1934, and there he writes in the introduction, the device was successfully used from Sweden to Uruguay, Spain, and God knows where. It was incredibly widespread back then. And then comes a sentence that's crucial for me. The results exceeded all hopes. The results exceeded all hopes. And there are pictures from that time, like that in 1934. For example, there was a woman who was 82 years old. She had black skin cancer. And back then there was no Photoshop or anything. It was just the truth. And she had such a big skin cancer, it was so big. After 2 treatments, it was only 10%. And then they did another month and it was completely gone. And the entire facial skin was completely rejuvenated. It seems like an energy transfer to me, but before we dive into this, there's certainly still a lot of information material from this Ewald Paul and from Lakhovsky that's been found again. A lot of these things were then on the index. The books were banned. But we have downloaded PDFs for whoever's interested, which we can happily forward. Because what happened back then is so exciting. Where can I find these documents? You can download these PDFs from QuantiSana.ch. It's very exciting. And this Ewald Paul, he has instructions for roughly every disease you can think of. No matter what, from A to Z. Allergies, cysts, they treated basically everything at the time, although they still had disadvantages, I have to say. For example, these Lakhovsky waves, by the way, he called it the multi-wave oscillator. So he assumed that I have to address every cell, since they didn't have the measuring methods at the time, to know the natural frequency of every cell, of every tissue. They said, we have to have 1 million carrier waves and offer radio frequencies so that every cell has some chance of going into resonance with something. And then I have the cell's own resonance when it's doubled again. I increase the amplitude, so I increase the energy in the cell, so they had millions of carrier waves, so to speak, and offered that. And they also had a disadvantage. These carrier waves, they are also included resonance with metal. What does that mean? I've heard that before. When it resonates with metal, the following happens. If I now have a strong electromagnetic wave with a lot of energy and I get to metal, a spark gap can build up, or the tissue around the metal can heat up enormously. It can be 200 degrees. Then the whole tissue around such an implant is broken. If I had a titanium implant now, a titanium implant or an artificial knee joint that has metal parts or something, they had this disadvantage back then, and some devices still have that that today. There are different providers of frequency technologies. There are devices that cost 25,000. There are devices that cost over 50,000 euros. They still have this disadvantage. That's the one. It says Lakhovsky on it. Multi-wave oscillator. Exactly. That's the old guard who was still in resonance with metals. Maybe they have already adapted the technology a bit today, but I know a few device manufacturers who definitely will resonate with metal. I have a dermatologist as a customer who has such a device for 53,000 euros, and that resonates with metal. Whether everyone does it today, I still can't judge. I don't have to, but of course the danger is already there, as it shouldn't go in resonance. Otherwise, I basically can't use it without hesitation. These questions keep coming up. Can I somehow use this on my head? If I still have a titanium tooth somewhere or gold alloys? No, definitely not. And another topic is what they used to have too. They actually left out the exposure of the head, usually, because they weren't sure if it might have negative side effects, so they normally left out the head. And now with the newly developed, further developed technologies, like here with a cell tuner, I can use it everywhere without hesitation. Why the head too? Why do I no longer have any resonance? The Russian scientists managed to create these electromagnetic waves to resonate only with water. That means my body water starts to vibrate and gets a certain structure. Everything consists of very large parts of water. In the brain, I have 90% water components. In the blood, I have 94% water components. In the eye, 94% water components. I think the lungs are 86% water. The bottom line is that 99% of all molecules in a human body are water molecules. And I address them, I charge them with energy, I make them hexagonal. Maybe you can explain that to me again, because I still have problems understanding when I put energies into the water, next to the water or all around in the water. I have some gold alloys, and this water gets more and more energies. Why is this energy transfer from water to metal not there? I honestly can't answer you, but it won't happen. Yeah, I know, I've seen it. It's always cold, isn't it? Only the places where there are water molecules, where there is inflammation, where there are germs, where there are mutations, those get warm. Where something is wrong, it gets warm there, but only basically because the energy is accepted there. And then the cell membrane tension may be increased, and then the mitochondria are activated, but only where there is simply a weak point. A metal doesn't belong in the body. That's the way it is. And the Russian scientists have done something brilliant, that the electromagnetic waves and these energy impulses can only go into resonance with water, and only water can change energy. Now, we're just closing the circle. What is possible nowadays to intervene in a physical discomfort with this type of therapy? I'll say it is probably the most ingenious invention we can have. We've talked about hexagonal water several times. Hexagonal water is the most important thing you can do in your body. Pure hexagonal water, energetically charged. This water is anti-inflammatory. This water is antioxidant. This water is detoxifying, and this water enables the body to draw in a lot of energy. There are a few aspects that are only discussed in very special books. With the hexagonal layers, I have the basic structure of a battery. The hexagonal layers are negatively charged, bulk water is positively charged. The trigger to activate this battery is sunlight. Then I have a natural battery in my body. But now listen to this. In these free electron plasmas that are formed there, in this hexagonal water, you have to imagine that they tunnel via microtubules into the quantum vacuum. The quantum vacuum consists of dark energy and dark matter. After all, it makes up 96% of our universe. And in this quantum vacuum, I have an infinite amount of energy. The energy density is 10 to the power of 94 per cubic centimetre, so an infinite amount of energy. Now, these free electrons tunnel there, so to speak, collect energy like a taxi, bring it back. Incidentally, in my opinion, this is the aspect why the phenomenon of light nutrition can work. There are people people, it has been proven, scientifically verified, who may no longer eat anything. There are also people who don't even have to drink. How can this work? They don't even lose weight. This can only be done using energy frequencies. That can only be via phenomena that electrons collect energy from somewhere else. Of course, they also live from solar energy, from the Earth's magnetic field or cosmic rays, but the remaining 25% of energy has to be fetched somehow. They get it out of the quantum vacuum, I'm pretty sure of that, and that works via free electrons. Of course, I didn't understand all of the last 5 minutes of this chemistry class. It was a bit overwhelming for me. It's a bit hardcore, I have to say that. Yeah, so especially with this energy transfer or in this vacuum field. Can you please explain again with simple words? Very well. What is the universe made of? A lot of nothing, right? No, far from it. It's not nothing. Actually, from everything. Everything is contained in the void. The last official numbers from NASA are that 96% are made of, 68% dark energy and 28% dark matter. So now we have 4% left. Another 4% we can see and explore, maybe 1 or 2% with our technologies today. So what is it? We have to pay attention to what is this quantum vacuum? It's far from nothing. All the gravitational fields, everything that is in the universe, is related to it somewhere. And you know that the smaller something gets, surprisingly, the more energy is in it. When you burn paper, this much energy is released. With coking coal, it's more compressed and this much energy is released. And let's see now what happens. Now we go even smaller. A hydrogen bomb takes less than a gram of material. Less than a gram of material, and how much energy is released? Now I'm going into the sun. Nothing happens other than no more atomic splitting, but atomic fusion. 2 hydrogen atoms are fused to form helium. How much energy is released? It's almost infinite. Now I'm going down even further. Now I'm getting into the quantum vacuum. The energy density is 10 to the power of 94, so a 10 with 94 zeros. So completely infinite. And now there are certain tricks of nature. How to get to that energy. Plants use it too. And there, hexagonal water is the key, because only when I have hexagonal water in me, I have these free electron plasmas who can tunnel into this quantum vacuum. Back to that hexagonal water again. This structure of the hexagonal water is made by these long-wave or by these short-wave frequencies, by the complexity of these energies and information frequencies. And the excess of electrons, which ultimately has an anti-inflammatory effect, has an antioxidant effect. Does it also come in through this transfer of energy? No, it works a little differently. For example, if I have hexagonal water, then I have hexagonal structures. I have ring structures. Water molecules usually have the biochemical formula of H2O. When I have hexagonal water, there are 6 oxygen atoms with hydrogen atoms in between and form a ring structure. Incidentally, it's the same in the carbon area with benzene. That's why all phytochemicals are polyphenols that have the strongest antioxidant effects. All have benzene ring structures. Sakuma OPC, all of them. And our 4 amino acids that make up our DNA are also hexagonal carbon atoms. In the end, there are chains on the outside, but there are benzene rings in there everywhere. That's important because then in these 6-way rings, I need only a few atoms, and these atoms can use electrons together that swing around the outside in so-called probability clouds. That means that because the electrons can be used together, I have additional free ones available. And these free ones are then formed. So I have these hexagonal layers, and then neutron, electron plasma form underneath these hexagonal layers and above these hexagonal layers. And they are then available as antioxidants. Supermen who can neutralize all free radicals billions of times over. So it's really worth thinking about these hexagonal structures. It's the most important property of water. I don't know why this is not discussed in public. And we used to have that. Natural spring water is hexagonal. I also believe glacier water is. The glacier water in Hunza is also hexagonal. And people are 120 years old there. The most important food there is this hexagonal water. And if now Basically, water passes over kilometers, the water's dead. That is destructured, no longer living, just not hexagonal. That's also not cell available. And it's not cell accessible, it's too big, it's macroclustered. It has to be microclustered, hexagonal, then I'll have the best results. I can do hexagonal water with this exposure, but what is simply extraordinary with this exposure, I can also make the body fluids hexagonal. And they make up 44 kilograms for a 75 kilogram man. Wow! I have one last question. Because earlier I thought that electron transfer takes place in this hexagonal water through the stick. It's created automatically. Additional electrons also come in via energy. But I say the most important measure is this hexagonality and the cell membrane tension, supporting the body to increase cell membrane tension. Because you once explained to me in another episode, a healthy cell has a cell membrane tension of -70, -80 millivolts. And when it sinks, then there is disease, inflammation and pain. And if you do this electron transfer with this stick, this cell membrane tension goes up. And now I actually interpret it that electrons are entering, so that this energy is there in the cell. And I really need, for everything, I need electrons. For example, if I have a cancer cell, and if I say a tumour grows, then it doesn't grow because new cells are constantly being created, but because the old ones don't leave. In the cell membrane, they remain linked, glued together. And at the mitochondria, there is a complex, called the citrate complex. And there are 3 to 4 electrons in a complex. If I add electrons to this complex, I can also do this through food. Johanna Budwig already demonstrated this in 1951, the oil-protein diet. So you have to take linseed oil, normal milk, plus low-fat quark, stir it well, eat it. Then I feed this complex with the missing electrons, so to speak, and then the old cell can separate again. And then the principle of apoptosis occurs, so it dies. So I basically prevented the tumour from enlarging. Johanna Budwig already knew that in 1951, so I have to verify that these cells get a lot of electrons. Electrons transfer information, transfer energy. And the mitochondria work a lot with electrons. So the more electrons I have, the better it is. Actually, all this time, Tesla knew this. He already knew it back then. He has also done a lot in the health sector and has often healed himself with his own devices and is actually phenomenal, just phenomenal. It's absurd that such ingenious technology disappeared. You said such a nice sentence in the cafe upstairs. I'd like to quote it again. You told me that it appears to you to be the holy grail of medicine, what Tesla invented. For me, hexagonal water in particular is the most important thing that can be made available to people, animals and plants. Dear Peer, thank you very much for this episode, for this information about this technology from Tesla to Lakhovsky. You said another name. Ewald Paul and George Lakhovsky were basically the leading scientists. But as I said, there were over 500,000 devices in Germany alone of different generations with certain technical disadvantages that we no longer have today. Everything disappeared. Everything disappeared. Now we're back. Now we're back and improved. So, dear viewers, you heard it. Tesla really was an incredible man. And you can still look at it with big, amazed eyes today. Everything that was done by him and is now coming back, such as just simple bulb here, a fluorescent tube here, just like that. And just to understand this idea of what it does to the body is totally fascinating. So, dear viewers, I wish you all the best. An enlightenment like the one I experienced today. All the best for the future. And see you next time.